Welcome back to our Line Opinion panel for a final discussion this week. After a scalding hot week across the state, we could be getting rain soon, monsoon as the word is known. That's as we work through a historic fire season, the largest ever in state history already. Now, when do we need to start shifting our concern to the threat of flooding on those fire-damaged lands? Senator Feldman, let me start with you. You've seen a lot of fires here. Should we be concerned right now?
Yes, thunderstorms are not a blessing. Not only can they light new fires, but because of the Calf and Hermit's Peak fires burned so hot and on such steep slopes, the soil is just parched. And so there's a great danger that the ash will run off down into the acequias, down into the reservoir like Story Lake near Las Vegas, and really clog up the system. I remember how after the Conchas fire, the Jemez River ran black, and the Rio Grande was black as well.
Yep.
I think that could well happen as a result of flash flooding. And remember also how the Dixon orchards were destroyed after that fire. And that fire was really, really hot too. And so it really just took out bridges on the Santa Clara Reservation and up near Cochiti. And it was a real disaster that it took years to recover from that as well.
Yep, exactly right. Dave, we got expecting a visit from President Joe Biden in the next few days. We know he's going to go to Santa Fe to meet with the governor, but we don't know yet if he's going to survey the damage firsthand. That kind of a typical presidential visit. How important is it for him to see the catastrophe with his own eyes when it comes to policy and things like that?
Well, I think, so much of being president these days is visual. It's the picture, it's the TV spot, gets covered on the news. I think it's important to show up. I think it's important to understand, and I think that he obviously knows the governor. I think he's here in support of the governor. But on a very real thing, I think if a president shows up and he sees the amount of damage, it doesn't hurt for when he puts his finger on the scale to figure out how much money should be sent. And, from the reports that we're getting, there's a tremendous amount of damage up north. The biggest wildfire in the history of the state is not to be taken lightly. And, so I think it's important if the president shows up and he sees the damage, and it makes it helpful if he gets more money, because really money won't solve all the problems, but it won't hurt either. That's one of the, and when we start having these disasters, like, a lot of people's livelihoods taking wood out of the forests are now gone. We have a, potentially very threatening flood season coming. So nothing is good here. So yes, he should show up. He should say, basically, here's my checkbook. I'm signing a very big check for you guys. Well, let me know what else you need, and I'll be here for you. That would be my suggestion.
Let me stay with you, Dave, on that very point. There's a lot of issues now about who should pay for the damage, all that kind of thing. Should the president
Maybe the people who set the fire should pay for the damage.
That's right. Should the president be prepared to say flat out, we're going to solve this financially, and maybe surround himself with some families that have been affected?
I mean, yes, I think he should be prepared because, fire policy, if it doesn't matter if it's New Mexico or California, or wherever we're looking, fire policy just simply doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the last 50 years. Some people would say the last 100 years. I don't know. I'm not an expert on fire policy. But, we are if we're dealing with climate change, we are going to have more fires. I think this is one of those areas where people need to understand who you vote for and who you elect matters, because this is the kind of problem that government should undertake. We need new ideas, we need new policies, and we need new ways to sort of attack these problems. And so who you vote for really does matter.
See, I think that's the opportunity, David, is have the president look at camera in our state right in the eye and say we're going in a new direction about how we fight these fires. Daniel was mentioned a little bit earlier about, of course, this is the largest fire season ever in New Mexico, 2 largest fires in state history, sparked within a couple of months. How can we find more urgency on this issue? What needs to be done?
Same thing I've said for years, Gene. Get the federal government out of managing the forests and turn it over to the people that are actually successful at managing the forests. You go anywhere in New Mexico, you can see the line between the natives, the native reservation lands, and the national forests that abut each other. You go on the reservation, unbelievably well kept versus the forest, and we're not even utilizing the individuals that have the best knowledge to take care of the forests across our state. So yeah, I think that this could potentially, the presidential visit could potentially be a problem for Democrats in New Mexico, only because you have a fire in a northern part of New Mexico that was lit by government officials, by the federal government, and now the federal government's going to show up, and there's going to be optics with the federal government saying, you may wind up finding that all the Democrat candidates for office are in Washington, D.C. on the same day raising money as the president's in New Mexico visiting. There may not be a lot of people from New Mexico that want to be seen right now with the perception of the feds being the ones that started this fire. But we've got to do something. I'm hoping at some point, I don't care what party figures out, that the government's answer to managing and conserving our federal lands is an unabated failure and needs to be changed.
Senator Feldman, again, if I'm on the president's team, I'm saying this is an empathy visit. We're going to talk to families. We're going to surround you with families. We're not going to surround you with official U.S. Forest Service people because they're sort of the bad guys right now, as Dan just mentioned. I'm curious how you think it should go with a presidential visit of this type.
Well, politicians from Washington can step in it when it comes to northern New Mexico, dating back to when I think it was John Kennedy who came to northern New Mexico during his presidential campaign and really lauded the Mondragons instead of the Mondragons, and was immediately seen as an outsider. Yeah. Now, Joe Biden has been to New Mexico before and knows New Mexico a little bit better, but he has to be very aware of the cultural aspect of this fire, and of this part of the country, which is quite unique, very different from California, where he's visited fires before, or other places, and be very cognizant of the history of protest, as Dan has mentioned, against the Forest Service. And against and it's a tradition in northern New Mexico to be against the fire service ever since the Tierra Amarilla raid, and so he would do well, I think, to acknowledge that mistakes have been made, and that he's going to be searching for solutions and working with the acequias and the local residents to rebuild and restore what is a treasure of New Mexico that has been destroyed.
That's right.
It's the heart of New Mexico, as far as I'm concerned.
He's walking into a lot of anger. It's going to take all the political, prowess that he has here. Thanks again to our line panel, as always, this week. Be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics the line covered on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages.